Alright guys, next up we got upper mid tier. You could argue this is just lower high tier, and honestly I don't care. I just put it as like not quite high tier but better than other mid tiers, because I feel like the characters in high tier are like a step above everything else in this list so far, and these characters all here feel like they're close to the mid tier. With that said, let's get into it. Robin. Robin's actually a pretty good character. The character has a very annoying kit, like hits hard, good zoning, lots of mechanics that are beneficial, like with the items and books, and really is both a well-rounded character but also a pretty decent counter pick. There's also when you get to the characters where it's like some of them have some pretty strong results overall. Not sure if Robin's one of them. Nope, not at all. Actually, bottom 10 in terms of results. That's actually surprising to me, to be honest, that the character's results are bottom 10. Decent character, I think, but like not justifiable to put anywhere above like the bottom of this tier. This is more of me just having faith in the character. Mewtwo. Wadi putting in work with Mewtwo is the main reason he's here. Like, you know, he's beaten top players. He's beaten Spargo with Mewtwo before. He's beaten me with Mewtwo. Ugh, lost to Mewtwo. Feels bad. Even though he generally has been struggling at big events lately, he occasionally pulls out these really nice wins with basically just Mewtwo. Just so the character can work, and it makes sense. You have a character that, like, it's kind of like Ridley in a way, where when the character's playing his game, he's playing his game, and you're not playing the game. But when the character loses neutral and he's playing the opponent's game, oh man, he sucks. If he wasn't so light, he'd actually be just, like, upper high tier, I think. But it's mostly his weight that makes him so bad, and his size, of course. It's also one of those things where it's like, why play Mewtwo when the character is like was really bad in Ultimate's release and took a lot of buffs to get to this point? So it's like pretty much every other Mewtwo player, you know, played someone else. Only Rewadi kind of like went back to Mewtwo after the buffs, and the people that might have been interested in Mewtwo moved on to other characters. And this happens a lot with characters that get buffs, where unless the buffs are like insane, like Falcon level buffs over time, people aren't really going to pick up a character once they've committed to not playing that character in the first place. Ike is just, super mediocre swordsman that does what a swordsman should do, and nothing else. Most regions probably have like a decent level Ike as far as I know, like not doing anything insane, but doing well because he's a satisfying character. Satisfying, easy to play. You can make mistakes with him because he's heavy and hits kind of hard, and he has enough recovery mix-ups, although they aren't that good. Results-wise, yeah, he's decent. Like, he just feels very middle of the pack in basically every way. Alright, I know people about to say, Dabuz, Incineroar, you're crazy. Incineroar is interesting, because he's not a good character, right? He's not, like, an amazing character or anything. In fact, if you want to say he's in, mid, like, this part, like, the low tier, maybe this mid-tier area, fine. But the way I look at this character is that he is very polarizing, in that, you know, very slow, hits very hard, very good moves, blah, blah, blah. But he has a good amount of counterplay to his weaknesses, right? Like, projectile characters and spacing characters, yeah, they beat him. But, his counter is so good. Like, he just counters projectiles and spacing tools, and suddenly, if he ever gets close to you, it hits even harder than normal. I think counter is also frame 3, so like it can be a combo escape tool. And he has a lot of dirty stuff, like neutral B buffed with counter destroys shields. Like, someone's in the corner, just reads like their corner option, he side Bs them, they die. And there's actually Incineroar players putting in work. When it's a glitch, there's a few Incineroar players who made it into like the final bracket. SkyJ from Mexico is actually one of Mexico's best players with Incineroar. And he's like one of those players that like causes upsets every now and then, and it's just like, you don't want to fight him. There's also a Incineroar player named Animal King Wolf in Midwest that does well with the locals. It's one of those characters where the character got buffed throughout Ultimate's lifespan, and now the character is decent, but people already kind of commit to not playing the character. And I also feel like a character like this, who can be so swingy in his favor, I value that a little bit more over the consistency of a lot of these characters in like the mid-tier area, where it's like, you know, Tunic consistent with zoning but doesn't hit hard. Pit's consistent and neutral, doesn't hit that hard. Banjo's pretty consistent with a lot of stuff. A lot of these characters here are like not too swingy. And when you're looking at characters that aren't particularly strong, being able to swing the game in your favor, I think that's more valuable, because I think you can cheese out more wins from good players with a character like Incineroar than a character like the Pits. Even if a theoretical matchup chart is just worse than these characters down here. It's that kind of like, hey, no one wants to fight this, hey, you could just lose factor that a lot of these lower characters don't have. And then K-Rool's kind of the same category. Completely different archetype, right? Besides being a heavyweight character, completely different archetype. But the same kind of idea where it's like, you don't want to fight a good K-Rool, because if the character is well versus you, it's a problem. If you just make a couple mistakes and the opponent plays well, like, you will lose those stocks in those games very quickly. So when you talk about characters that aren't really good, once again, being able to cheese out games and sets by just being able to play well for like a short period of time or exploiting mistakes while having really polarizing strengths even if you could argue that this character has a lot of not good matchups, more than some of these characters in mid tier, even low tier. The fact that you can just overcome these matchups through a couple really good plays, and the fact that it's like super scary to run into one for that reason, means I think the character is more valuable overall. And also I know Kirby Kid does very well with the character when he travels and stuff. Even if the results aren't that good, another character where it's like, hey, they got buffed quite a bit throughout Ultimate and people gave up on him, but he's actually pretty good. Alright, Belmonts. When I think of counterpick characters, it's exactly Belmonts. I know Dom does pretty well with the character in Cali. Yeah, there's not much else to say about the character. You have some really good matchups, even among good characters, right? Pretty sure Bowser just gets destroyed by Belmonts, or at least it's hard. I can imagine like Wolf not liking the character, right? Like I can imagine he has some really good top tier matchups, but then some garbage low tier matchups. Like I'm sure Pichu, I can imagine him like Puff, surprisingly enough, doing very well versus this character. Puff, because the airspeed means it's so hard for Belmont to hit him. If someone were to ever like learn Belmonts just as a counterpick, that'd probably be really good. But people just don't do that in Ultimate. Like top players don't pick up characters for counterpick purposes. They say they will, but they don't do it. But yeah, decent results. Mostly from solo mains, I believe. Wii Fit. Wii Fit's a pretty okay character overall. Gets decent results with John Numbers and Varun. And really just well-rounded. Outside of poor hitboxes, kind of like solid like in all these other areas. And I think you can generally expect someone like Varun to make it out of pools and like do decent, but nothing crazy. Mega Man's an interesting character, because a lot of people think this character's high tier, and I'm curious about the results on Mega Man. Yeah, Mega Man's like mid-tierish with results, 39. It does well, actually, versus, I think, a lot of these swordy characters in this game that are like a bit slower and generally good for like more spacing-based characters. And I think a lot of these characters, like in this tier, even in the tier above, he's pretty decent versus. I think the problem is certain characters just obliterate him. And I don't think he's like good enough versus like a lot of characters, say like Cloud or like Hero, Samus, like Bowser, that like he's a hard counter pick for them. I think he's just an annoying matchup where he probably wins. But like matchups he loses, like I'm pretty sure Wolf is one, Sheik is one, Fox is one. He gets blown up and he just can't deal with like fast smashing that well at all. I know Kamame plays like 4 billion characters now because Mega Man isn't it for him in this game. I know there's a Mega Man player in Japan named Repo doing well, and in Japan there was an event where there was like 6 Mega Mans at top 96 because he's pretty popular there. But like none of them really like did super well as far as I know. And it's one of those characters where it's like, yeah, solid he runs bad matchups, and also just isn't scary enough. Is annoying, very annoying, but isn't scary. In a way, this character sometimes feels like a mid tier, but I know that's cap because this character is so reliable at zoning and being annoying. Alright, Ken. Ken is like, he's fast enough to get in and blow you up. He is a bit inconsistent with his combos because you can like SDI his stuff and like DI his strings and make it harder for him. Hell, my set versus Vendetta where like people thought he had a game winning combo, but I made sure to DI his stuff so he couldn't get it. And like good DI versus Ken limits his ability to just blow you up generally. But he's fast. He has good projectiles to like get in with sometimes occasionally zone with nothing crazy. Yeah, pretty just mediocre overall, I guess. Like FGC characters are not common because like they're very weird to play. They require a lot of dedication. So arguably this character could be high tier to be honest. But I think the difficulty of execution because he's an FGC character that isn't Terry holds him back a bit because when you get nervous, you're gonna mess things up. So high execution characters are really bad under nerves and pressure, which torments cause for people. Alright, Link. People thought this character was absurd when Ultimate came out. People were like, oh my god, Link is crazy, bombs and zoning and blah blah blah. I was one of them. I was like, yo, Link's really good. But being slow frame data and movement wise, having a poor disadvantage state like juggling, ledge trapping, being close to like the ledge when you're off stage so the opponent can edge guard you, is all just bad to have. And you can play super lame versus him. You can like pressure him really hard. And he's just like kind of a stereotypical like swordy projectile zoner. Which is fine because he hits hard, he has good moves, he has a lot of fun, good setups. His ledge trapping's absurd. Because I think he's just generally like doing well at mid-level. And then at top level it just doesn't exist. Alright, Rosa. You know, I'm a bit biased towards this character, right? One of my mains, I kind of whoop people with this character. Beating people like Meister and Proto Bonham with Rosalina and Luma. And like outside me, it's like Homaga is okay with the character. Yuzu is more of a Pichu main, I think, nowadays. And it's like the character has, you know, bias, but I think the character has some pretty decent matchups and some good tools. But I am outplaying people a lot when I play this character. I'm just so good with the character that I can do it easily enough. But yeah, not a particularly bad character. Maybe could be high tier with some more optimization things. She's a very high skill ceiling because of all her tech, so that's very nice. It makes her fun and also gives her a lot of room for improvement in the future, so she likely gets better over time, but not by much probably. Alright, totally been putting in work with Falco. And it makes sense. Falco's a character that he hits like a heavyweight sometimes, because even if he's not hitting for 30 damage with one move, he's comboing for insane damage. 36, not the best, but clearly above average. And it makes sense. The neutral, it's not a great neutral, but having the Transcendent Laser kind of lets him play lane with neutral and control the pace of the game a bit, which is good. Along with having like good like mix-ups, like, you know, he can use side B to blow you up. His grab game and his tilt game and his falling area game is all threatening, so he has a lot of ways to start strings. Having multi-hits across his entire kit is really nice for pressuring. Because he's like able to kind of slow down the pace of neutral, he is so threatening. His massive double jump is actually a big deal. It makes his recovery disadvantage stay a lot better than people give him credit for. He also has a 2-frame air dodge, which I mentioned specifically for him, because it turns which should otherwise be a very easy to combo character and something that's not easy to super combo. Well-rounded combo-based character that has a game plan he can consistently get. Kazuya, man, I almost want to put this character as high tier, but I think when you get to like high and top level ultimate, playing super lame is just very common. And this character like gets lamed out. Like this character has some matchups where Kazuya players like, this is unwinnable. And then I see them lose the entire game until the last like 10 seconds to get one hit and just take a stock off literal 0 death set true. And I'm like, so I don't know how to feel about this character, because this character is both broken and awful. Not much to say about him. The character is still kind of being figured out. I think people still play him, but I do think people are dropping their character, which is part of the reason he's not high tier to me, is because like, people are dropping the character nowadays, I think, and losing just general like faith in him, which frustrating character to play. I can't blame people. Now, you put Inkling around mid tier. You think this character is atrocious, and I still don't think the character's that great, but I do think the buffs let Inkling play very lame and like poke heavy with neutral B. Like all the buffs she got in the recent patch were pretty good. And I mentioned them specifically for her because I think they let her do a lot more. Like the forward tilt buff probably lets her ledge trap with that, which is nice. Reloading Ink having less end lag feels like a pretty nice thing just for her entire game plan. But I don't know. I kind of am just putting my faith in her being pretty solid and maybe even high tier with the buffs, if a player is willing to play her. But I don't think people are going to jump on Inkling again now that they stopped playing her a while ago with these buffs. So I think she's going to end up just staying here with like, you know, her being a pretty popular character that gets decent results among like mid-level players, but a high level isn't really going to make any sort of footprints anywhere. But if you had someone like, let's say, a Sonic player play her, I think she would do very well, to be honest, despite the fact she still has her weaknesses of being a little bit light and having a lot of trouble killing versus good players. Yeah, that's this like upper mid-tier area. It's like this upper half could easily be high tier, honestly, in the future, and this lower half could easily be like just mid-tier, if not low tier. This is a good example of characters with like potential, where there's potential to be really good with the right player, or potential to suck when people get better at the matchup. Alright guys, next video is going to be the spicy characters, the good ones, in my opinion. Catch you for that video.